Well, good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here to the celebration of the new completed Barnes Road extension. Joining me this morning are a great group of folks up here from Fire Chief Brian Schaefer. We also have our North Precinct Commander Dan Torok, Karen Kearney from the South Indian Trail Balboa neighborhood chair, and also Kurt. Are you a chair these days?
Past chair.
Past chair. And then, of course, our councilwoman for Northwest Spokane, or one of them, Candace Mumm. And this is another example as we continue to work on a joint strategic plan between the city administration and the city council. And generally speaking, especially as you see here today in the area of our safe and healthy committee work, talking about, and especially from a task team that was put together, our response times in this area. And it really comes to that, and especially between Indian Trail and 5 Mile neighborhoods, and how can we provide the safe environment in the safe neighborhood and a connected neighborhood. You know, and it was several years ago that we had a couple-year task force. It was the fire task force. And if we all remember, it was actually 2013, so 4 years ago, it was a report that said, and we looked at response times, and it actually was recommendation G4 in the fire task team report that, quote, surmised that the response times could also be reduced through an integrated approach to road connections such as Barnes Strong Road project between Indian Trail and 5 Mile. And so it really came to light that as we looked at our response times, that one way to do that was our integrated approach that we have in our Public Works division of how do we make the integration. So who would have ever guessed as we looked at response times that would trigger how we look at our road and our road infrastructure. The $1.7 million project also includes installation of a 12-inch water main and new curbs, sidewalks, bike lane, and stormwater facilities. So again, an amazing discussion of connecting our different resources, our different needs from stormwater to response times, and also to have an integrated street, one that involves all modes of transportation and pedestrian. And so it really is exciting to be here today as an example of, yes, a very large strategic initiative going into strategies like integrated planning and integrated construction, but then ultimately also the end result of a walkable, bikeable connection between two of our neighborhoods, and also the response times, which you'll hear about more. I do want to quickly thank our general contractor, Inland Asphalt, and the subcontractors, Cameron Riley, Clearwater Summit Group, Eller Corporation, all who came together to do this. And as we see the construction going on across the city, it's pretty amazing, our private partners, and how you guys all make this happen. A quick shout out to the Washington State Department of Transportation and Keith Martin, and to the Spokane Regional Transportation Council, who helped shepherd this project through, and it's part of our regional transportation network. The street shortens the distance to shopping and improves emergency response times. It also provides an additional access routes for these neighborhoods to have been a concern about how emergency evacuation can happen in these areas. Also, as we'll talk about here shortly, the improved public safety can take many different forms: pedestrian safety, response times, both for police and fire. So much to celebrate here today, and really a great team effort by both the city divisions, city staff, our private, and really our neighborhoods, and we'll hear from those. So with that, I'll be followed by several of the others up here, but we'll start with Brian Schaefer.
Okay. This project has been a priority for the Spokane Fire Department for well over 10 years. Following a large fire in 2005, we recognized, working with the neighborhoods, the importance of evacuation routes and response times. And our business response times are equated or correlated to outcomes. So if somebody's having a heart attack, if somebody's having problems breathing, or if their child is having an emergency, those seconds, those minutes really do matter. This road allows us the opportunity to cut our response times in half to areas which formerly would take us all the way south to Francis and around up the backside of 5 Mile. So it does have a direct tie to saving people's lives. And we're just very thankful of the integrated approach across the spectrum of all city government, so it saves citizens money. Myself, as being a taxpayer here, I can honestly say that I'm very proud of everybody working together in this fashion so that we don't have different silos and different projects. This is just an amazing example of what can happen when people work together. And I'll pass it along here to Dan Torok.
Good morning. Chief Midle couldn't be here, so he sends his regards. Pretty much echo what Brian said. In my 28 years of being here, there's never been only but one viable option to get from Indian Trail from the city. Whereas we had Strong Road. If any of you guys ever traveled Strong Road, we know what condition it was normally in. Doesn't seem to matter how many times it was graded. Those washboards returned in a couple days. So traverse that road, as long as your lug nuts were tight, your dental premiums were up to date, you could give it a try. But normally it was so slow and you had to proceed so cautiously, a kid on a BMX bicycle would pass you. So, I mean, needless to say, cop cars going up were difficult. Fire trucks, I think, were virtually impossible to traverse that hill. So we're happy to see this project come together to give us another way in and out. It will cut our time dramatically from North Point area to be able to come across 5 Mile and drop down. So with that, I'll turn this over to Karen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning. This is so exciting. I have been back in Spokane for 19 years, and I've been waiting for this to happen and happen and happen, and it finally has. It's an honor to be before you this morning as chair of the Balboa South Indian Trail Neighborhood Council, and also to be representative of the neighborhood councils that can't be here this morning. Although I have Kurt Fackler here, who is a past president of the North Indian Trail Neighborhood Council. And these neighborhoods, that a lot of them that can't be here this morning, will also be impacted by this project. I see the construction of Barnes Road contributing, as mentioned by Dan and also by Brian, as a response to the citizens for public safety emergencies, a better response to our citizens for public safety emergencies. I also see a decrease in the traffic on Woodside and on Indian Trail, which both have extremely high traffic counts. I want to thank Mayor Condon for seeing the worth of this project going forward. Councilwoman Mumm, I want to thank her and Councilwoman Stratton, that can't be with us today, for championing this project and for your constituents in the 3rd District. The road department, I know they had some part in this. I know they did. So I want to thank them for doing this project and having some intervention in this project and showing us how they always do it right. And with all this said, Mayor Condon, I want to get together with you over a piece of my apple cake and talk about how we can put a cop shop and a community center in my part of town. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Okay. Yeah, right.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to everyone who came out tonight. Some of you may not realize that you are standing on the side of a very unusual geological formation in the state of Washington. This is the side of a mesa, and it was formed tens of thousands of years ago, along with some help from some of the area volcanoes, and it is 400 feet in the air. So this geological mesa was used by animals and Native Americans for thousands of years until the farmers moved in and discovered that the top of the mesa had amazing dry land farming. So we had about 100 or so farms working and growing apples and wheat on the top of 5 Mile until water came in about mid-century. And when that happened, people moved up and built subdivisions, and we grew. We were one of the fastest growing neighborhoods in the city, but the roads didn't keep up. And so what happened was we started having human problems for emergency services and, as Chief Schaefer said, evacuations. I happen to live on this edge of the mesa, and I looked out my back window one day. I had heard fire sirens, and I could see flames and smoke shooting up the side of the canyon. And I thought, how are people going to get out of Indian Trail? And they were just a big stream of cars. There was really very few ways you could evacuate, and I knew something had to happen. And then I heard a story in my neighborhood about a woman who had a choking baby, and she knew the response times were one of the worst in the city because it takes so long to get fire trucks safely up the hill, sometimes over 10 minutes. She actually put her child in the car and drove it to herself, which probably wasn't probably should have called 911, but she was so concerned about the response time, she drove her choking child down the hill to get it to the hospital faster. And then within the last year, I saw some flashing lights outside my window. My next door neighbor had a heart attack. And I worried that the response time could possibly take his life. I'm glad to say that he made it, and he's doing great. But this is very important to the safety of our citizens on 5 Mile and Indian Trail. And this link is the missing puzzle piece that we need to really make 5 Mile and Indian Trail part of the city. So I want to thank everyone who worked on this project, who championed for it, and realized that it was the right thing to do. So thank you very much, and I will now turn it back to the mayor.
Well, it's great to have you all here. And again, what was the reduction in time that you tracked here, Brian?
It's 50%.
50% reduction in response time for fire. Of course, looked anecdotally at some of those response times, and we have that information for you. But a 50% reduction, a great utilization of our fire station that's here in Indian Trail to be able to cover more broadly these areas. And again, it's just another example of a culture shift of looking at integrated projects, everything from the water main to the multimodal connection here to public safety. And again, as we see the build out of a ever increasing capital plan, and I want to thank the council as we have approved the capital plan, and especially over the next 6 years to think a nearly $800+ million capital plan. And it really highlights these integrated projects across the city enterprise and how we can bring that redundancy, that resiliency into our neighborhoods. And at the end of the day, as we often talk about being the city of choice, making our neighborhoods the components that make them where people want to be and where they want to live. And Indian Trail and 5 Mile are some of our fastest growing and most sought after neighborhoods in the city. But we have these pieces that we need to also make part of them so we can continue to make them vibrant, both business centers and neighborhoods, and have a healthier community as we look at pedestrian and bike paths in this area. 1, 2, 3. Nice work.